So whether it be TikTok, Instagram or YouTube, I feel like if you're on the footballing side of any of these social media platforms, if you scroll through them hard enough and long enough, eventually you'll come across countless videos of remembering players from a bygone era. Whether that be players that retired 3 years ago or 30 years ago. Remembering FIFA cards from years ago or looking back at goal compilations from players that have retired. I always find it interesting to look at some of these players' careers once they're done and wrapped up and just get a better understanding of what happened in their career, where they went and how good they actually were, to put it into perspective. And this is a series I want to bring to this channel, just looking at some players that have retired, going over their career and just having a look at them as a whole. And whilst there is an absolute endless mine of players to go through, I've decided to start today with Gonzalo Higuain. Why did I pick him? Genuinely just throwing darts at a board blindfolded. He's as good a player to start with as anyone else, so let's dive right in. Higuain was an Argentinian striker who made his debut for River Plate. His debut would come in 2005 and his first league goal would come in 2006. He would only make 12 appearances in his first season, however in his second season he would score a brace in the derby against Boca Juniors. He ended that season playing 17 matches and notching up 10 goals, and his manager at the time declared that he was destined for stardom, and it wouldn't take long for that to materialise. The following season, going into the 2006-07 season, he would make a €12 million move from River Plate to Real Madrid. His first season there would see him win the league title and score in the Madrid derby. However, across the 21 appearances he made, he only scored 2 goals. However, as a young striker just coming over, there was plenty of time for him to improve. The following season, in 2007 and 8, he did improve slightly. He would play 9 more times and score 6 more goals, all 8 coming in the league. And once again he would be crowned the league champion. And he had scored an El Clasico just 57 seconds after coming off the bench in a 4-1 win over Barcelona. However, despite being a young striker, Higuain would have to improve very quickly. By this point he'd played just over 50 games for Real Madrid and had scored 10 goals. A goal ratio of 1 in 5 for a Real Madrid striker won't keep you there for very long. And in the next season, the 2008-09 season, he would do just that. An injury to Dutch legend Ruud van Nistelrooy seen Higuain get much more chances. And in 42 games across all competitions he would score 23 goals. All of his goals were domestically. He would make 7 of those 42 appearances in the Champions League and wouldn't notch a single goal. However, his 22 league goals would see him be the 5th highest goal scorer in La Liga that season and Real Madrid's top. At just 21 years of age, that was a good return at the time for Gonzalo Higuain. Real wouldn't win the league that season, but it was definitely a successful one for Higuain. And the following season seen him improve even further. In the 2009-10 season, he would play 40 games in all competitions, notching up 34 goal involvements, 29 of those being goals, 2 of them coming in the Champions League and 27 coming in La Liga. Real Madrid again wouldn't win the league title, but Gonzalo Higuain would be the club's top goal scorer. He would finish second in the La Liga goal scoring numbers, only being beaten by Lionel Messi. He even outscored Cristiano Ronaldo this year. And this season saw Gonzalo Higuain prove that he wasn't a one-season wonder. He had the consistency and the ability to be a top player for Real Madrid. The following year, however, would be a bit more disappointing for Higuain. He would only play 25 games for Real Madrid, just 17 in the league. He did notch up 19 goal involvements across all competitions, 13 being goals, and this was because he had received quite a lengthy injury. Higuain was diagnosed with a herniated lumbar disc and would be out for up to 4 months. He would return early but would still miss huge portions of the season, and most having to compete for game time with Karim Benzema. This did make things quite difficult for Higuain. However, the following season he was right back to it with Real Madrid. 54 appearances, seen him score 26 goals and notch up 12 assists. 22 of those 26 goals were in La Liga as well, alongside 10 of his 12 assists. Real Madrid wouldn't win the title, Barcelona would win that, and despite scoring 22 goals in 35 games, he would finish 4th in La Liga's top goal scoring charts with less than half the goals of teammate Cristiano Ronaldo and eventual winner Lionel Messi. And the following season seen Higuain unfortunately drop off a bit for Real Madrid. He would be crowned a La Liga champion for the 3rd time that year. However, 44 games across all competitions seen him score just 18 goals. 16 were in the league, just 1 in the Champions League was a pretty poor return from 9 appearances. This would be Higuain's last season at Real Madrid. Following this, in the summer of 2013, he announced he would be leaving Real Madrid, and the favoured move on the cards was Arsenal. However, before the move could be completed, Napoli's president had announced that he would be signing Higuain and Liverpool goalkeeper Pepe Reina. After both had passed their medicals, Higuain signed a 5-year contract in Italy for €40 million. His first season in Naples was a good one. Across all competitions, he played 46 games and scored 24 goals, whilst also racking up 12 assists. 4 goals in 5 games in the Champions League and 17 in 32 in Serie A. He would finish as the joint 4th highest goal scorer in Serie A that season, just 5 goals behind eventual winner Ciro Immobile. Whilst this wasn't a world-beating season, it was a good season for Higuain and Napoli. The next year he would improve. 58 appearances across all competitions, seen 40 goal involvements, 29 goals and 11 assists. 18 would be scored in Serie A, and Higuain would score 7 goals in 14 games in the Europa League. He would once again finish 4th in the Serie A top scorers charts, 4 goals behind eventual winners Luca Toni and Mauro Icardi. However, it was in his next and final season with Napoli where Higuain would punish anyone who dared step onto a pitch alongside Napoli.
Hello, my name is
Gonzalo Higuain.
You
dared to step onto the same pitch as Napoli.
Prepare to die.
In the league this season, under manager Maurizio Sarri, we've seen one of the best Napoli teams for years. Higuain would go on to score 36 league goals in 35 games. Napoli would fail to win the league title, losing out to Juventus, however only just and at the peak of Juventus's power. And as for the Italian Serie A top scorers charts that season, it was not even close. Higuain would be crowned the top scorer in Italy that year with 36 goals. Second place Paulo Dybala had just 19. At this point you would feel sorry for Higuain and Napoli that they hadn't been crowned champions, and unfortunately for Napoli this is what would ruin Higuain's reputation with them. That Napoli team was unfortunately torn apart. Manager Maurizio Sarri would leave to become the manager of Chelsea. Napoli's excellent holding midfielder Jorginho would also leave to go to Chelsea. And Higuain would make a €90 million move to rivals and title challengers last season, Juventus. A sore one for Napoli, a hard one for Higuain's career, but definitely one that would bring him a lot of success in his career. His first season at Juventus seen him play 55 times for the Italian outfit. He would score 32 goals across all competitions and notch up 4 assists, 24 goals in the league and 5 in the Champions League. He would be crowned a Serie A winner, but would once again finish 4th in the top scorers charts, 5 behind eventual winner Edin Dzeko. The following season would prove to be a bit more difficult for Higuain at Juventus. They would once again be title winners, however Higuain, after playing 35 league games, would only notch up 16 goals and 6 assists. He did have 5 in 10 games in the Champions League. However, this would see Higuain drop to being the 6th highest goal scorer in Italy that year, 13 goals behind eventual winners Ciro Immobile and Mauro Icardi. And this would be what seemed to be the end of Higuain at Juventus. Going into the 18-19 season, he would take a 6-month loan at AC Milan. This loan was meant to last longer and an option to buy clause was included for Milan. However, 8 goals in 22 games across all competitions seen the loan for Higuain at AC Milan end, and he would rejoin former manager Maurizio Sarri for the remaining 6 months of the season at Chelsea. 5 goals in 18 games for Chelsea, seen them not decide to keep him at the club permanently. However, he would win the Europa League, and given that former manager Maurizio Sarri won the Europa League with Chelsea and him not being entirely happy there, that seen him get the job at Juventus permanently. Higuain returned to Juventus hoping for a bit more of a fruitful time, given that his former manager from Napoli and Chelsea, Maurizio Sarri, was there. This was probably, in fact, definitely the manager that Higuain had played the best football of his career under. But he couldn't rescue a successful season with Juventus. 32 games in the league saw him score just 8 goals. 8 games in the Champions League saw him score just 2. And at the end of the season, Higuain would agree to mutually terminate his contract with Juventus and would leave for the MLS, signing for David Beckham's side, Inter Miami. He would join late on in the season in 2020 for Miami, playing just 9 games and scoring only 1 goal. The next season in 2021 was much more fruitful. He played 30 games, scoring 12 goals and getting 7 assists. And in the final year of his club career in 2022, he would play 29 MLS games for Inter Miami, scoring 16 goals and getting 3 assists. Despite constantly improving year after year for Miami, Higuain had decided at that point that his career was done and he decided to retire. As for his international career, he would play for just over 10 years for Argentina between 2008 and 2018. 75 games seen him score 33 times for Argentina. He would feature in the 2010 World Cup, the 2011 Copa America, the 2014 World Cup in which Argentina got to the final, the 2016 Copa America and the 2018 World Cup. Higuain's time, especially later on with Argentina, became really toxic as he was seen as a bit of a scapegoat to blame. There was a lot of pressure around Argentina because everyone wanted to see Lionel Messi really win an international trophy, and Higuain's poor performances and some big chances missed, to be fair, really seen him start to get the brunt of the blame. Whilst he was heavily laughed at later on in his career for some poor performances, there's absolutely no denying Higuain's quality throughout his career. In his club career, 710 games seen him score 335 goals and notch up 124 assists. He won 6 titles with Real Madrid and Juventus, 3 apiece, a Europa League with Chelsea, 3 Italian Cups between Juventus and Napoli, a Spanish Cup with Real Madrid, an Italian Super Cup, and 2 Spanish Super Cups. In my opinion, Higuain was a very underrated striker, and a striker whose career has definitely gone under the radar. He was an elite finisher and a striker that you could argue got very unlucky. His peak sort of started to end by the time he'd got to Juventus. He was really unlucky not to be crowned an Italian champion during that great season under Maurizio Sarri at Napoli, and the moves to AC Milan and Chelsea following his drop-off from Juventus really weren't great. However, at the time both clubs were struggling and it probably wasn't what Higuain needed. And of course, by the time he retired, at the time he was actually the highest scorer in Inter Miami's history. Since then, Luis Suarez has equalled it, Leonardo Campana has bested it, and Lionel Messi has bested it. However, at one point he was the club's highest all-time goal scorer, and there's no taking that away from him. So that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I do want to turn this into more of a series. I certainly enjoy going back through some history and looking at some great players' careers. Let me know in the comments if you guys enjoyed this video, if you want to see more, and I will see everybody in the next video.